On December 17, 2010, a 26-year-old street vendor in Tunisia set himself on fire. Within 60 days, 4 governments collapsed and 17 countries erupted in protest. One man's desperate act of defiance didn't just inspire millions, it literally rewired their brains. We talk about courage like it's a personal trait, something you either have or you don't. But neuroscience is revealing something far more unsettling. Courage is contagious. And not in some motivational poster way. It spreads through populations the same way a virus does, through exposure, replication, and cascade. Here's what most people get wrong about bravery. They think the brave person is the one without fear. But fMRI studies from the Weizmann Institute of Science show that courageous people experience the exact same amygdala activation, the same raw terror as everyone else. The difference? Their prefrontal cortex overrides the fear signal. They act anyway. And here's where it gets fascinating. When you watch someone act despite visible fear, your own prefrontal cortex starts rehearsing that override. Mirror neurons fire as though you are the one being brave. Your brain is literally downloading their courage. Think about what that means. Every act of defiance you witness is a free software update for your own fear response. Researchers at the University of Virginia call this moral elevation, a measurable physiological state triggered by witnessing someone else's bravery. Your heart rate changes, oxytocin floods your system, and your threshold for taking action yourself drops dramatically. This isn't theory, this is biology. Now let's see it play out in history. December 1st, 1955, Rosa Parks refuses to give up her seat on a Montgomery bus. But here's what the textbooks leave out. She wasn't the first. Claudette Colvin had done the exact same thing 9 months earlier. And before her, others had resisted too. So why did Parks' refusal trigger a 381-day boycott that reshaped American civil rights? Because by 1955, enough people had witnessed enough small acts of defiance that the collective fear threshold had eroded. Parks didn't start the cascade alone. She was the tipping point in a cascade that was already building, act by act, witness by witness. But can one person truly start the chain reaction from zero? The answer is yes, and the science explains exactly how. In 1968, psychologist Stanley Milgram ran what's now called the sidewalk experiment. He had one person on a busy New York street stop and stare up at nothing. Almost nobody joined them, but when 5 people stared upward, 80% of passersby stopped and looked. The lesson isn't about conformity, it's about permission. Each additional person who acts gives the next person evidence that action is survivable. That's the real mechanics of a moral cascade. The first person pays the highest price, they absorb the most risk and the most fear. But every single person who witnesses their act and doesn't look away, their amygdala recalibrates. The impossible starts to look merely difficult. The difficult starts to look necessary. Now think about the moments that changed everything. The lone man standing in front of tanks in Tiananmen Square in 1989. He didn't stop the tanks forever, but the image of his defiance was burned into millions of brains worldwide, and each of those brains was quietly, neurologically altered. The threshold for standing up dropped by a fraction in every single viewer. Multiply that fraction by 1 billion witnesses, and you start to understand why courage doesn't need to succeed to matter. Here's the part no one talks about. You don't have to be the person in front of the tank. You don't have to set yourself on fire. The research shows that even small, visible acts of moral courage, speaking up in a meeting, defending a stranger, refusing to stay silent, these trigger the same mirror neuron cascade in everyone watching. A 2019 study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that people who witnessed a coworker challenge unethical behavior were 3.5 times more likely to speak up themselves within the following week. Not because they were inspired in some vague emotional way, but because their brains had physically rehearsed the act through observation. Your courage is never just yours. Every time you act despite fear, you are silently, invisibly lowering the barrier for every person who sees you. You're not just being brave, you're manufacturing bravery in others. The next time you hesitate to speak up, remember, you're not just deciding for yourself, you're deciding for everyone watching. If this reframed how you think about courage, The next video goes deeper into why fear is the most misunderstood signal in your brain.